Hello and welcome to In-House Matters by Lawcadia, a series of short, sharp conversations with legal leaders who are driving change and improving how teams work. I'm Sasha Kirk, co-founder and chief marketing officer at Lawcadia, and thank you for joining us. Before we dive in, a quick note, this session is being recorded and we'll share a copy afterwards. And feel free to drop questions in the Q&A box as we go, and we'll have time to cover them off at the end. Today, we're talking about a concept that challenges the culture of constant busyness and redefines what productivity means for legal teams, the art of slow productivity. Instead of focusing on the speed and volume of work, we're going to explore how we can achieve greater impact with less burnout. Today, I'm joined by Caterina Cavallaro, a highly experienced legal operations leader and the author of Positively Legal, a regular column featured in the Association of Corporate Counsels Docket, which is their online publication. Caterina is Associate General Counsel at VGW and has led in-house teams, advised on operational transformation, and written extensively on leadership, productivity, and team performance. Her recent article on slow productivity struck a chord with many in the legal community, and it really struck one with me. And it was offering practical ways to shift from busy work to meaningful, high quality work and avoid the burnout. Caterina, welcome. I'm excited to unpack this with you.
Great. Thanks so much for having me, Sasha. Really excited to speak to everyone today.
Now, I'm admitting right up front that I'm one of those people that is always super busy, and I do wear it like a badge of honor. And then I get surprised when I'm faced with the realities of burnout. And unfortunately, it seems to be like on a regular vicious cycle for me. So this is a topic that I'm personally very interested in. So let's unpack this. What does slow productivity mean to you, and why is it relevant for in-house legal teams?
And firstly, I think I should say I'm pretty sure myself and probably many of the other people on the call today can relate to being super busy, wearing it like a badge of honor. And I think many people that I've met, myself included, and particularly women, have suffered burnout over the years. And I think a lot of it is just that portion, that push to what we used to think was productivity and what we needed to do. So I think first off, that's something probably important to acknowledge. I think we should really consider what productivity actually means. So we always consider productivity as always doing something. So always being busy, having continuous work. Often I think you'll find lawyers will, if they have a period that they're not frantic, might be actually quite worried and thinking there's something wrong rather than really looking at it in a different way. I like Professor and author Cal Newport's framing of productivity as it making sense in an agriculture or supply chain where farmers and assembly line workers can be assessed on what they produce. But that's obviously very different from knowledge workers, and that obviously includes lawyers, where the same measure of productivity unfortunately has endured. We've had billable hours. Anyone, whether you're in private practice or even as you've moved towards in-house, you still have the long hours. You still need to be seen in a lot of roles. You still need to be physically in the office. We've obviously still got the shift between when people are not in the office, are they being productive? And that's really important. And one of the things that Newport calls pseudo-productivity, which I really like, is the use of visible activity as the prime means of approximating actual productive work. So really looking busy when you're actually not producing or being productive, if you think about productivity as producing high quality work for yourself, for your in-house team, your business, or your clients.
And let's talk about breaking free from this busyness. What are the signs that a legal team is stuck in this culture of pseudo productivity?
I think one of the things that has happened over probably the last 15 years particularly is the proliferation of tools like messaging tools. So not only do we have our work to do and we have our emails, now many people who work in-house, you'll find that you have more than one channel for people to get in touch with you. People are on Slack, people have Google Chat, people have many different ways to get in touch. And it's usually a way for people to look like they're busy. If you're constantly responding to a chat, you're constantly making sure you're part of the Slack, you're putting an emoji somewhere, or you're responding very quickly, you might actually be doing a lot and you may actually need to. It's a really hard balance, which I struggle with myself, but you can look busy without actually achieving a lot and being productive. And it's something that, again, I like. Newport describes it as inevitably leading to more and more of the average knowledge worker's day being dedicated to talking about work as fast and frantically as possible through incessant electronic messaging rather than maybe actually producing things. And it's hard. It's a really challenging thing to do. I think so many of the tools we have now are meant to help us. But what I find they've done for lawyers is we've ended up with more administrative work than we ever have. Certainly, I've had a long career and I feel I do more administrative work now than I probably ever have. And a lot of it is just trying to make sure that you cover off every single channel that you need to do, and everyone in the business is happy and you've spoken to everyone. But it can lead some people to have ended their day doing a lot of things, but probably not having achieved or produced anything of value for themselves and for their team. So it ends up being doing a lot of tasks that are probably quite low value, but take up a lot of effort rather than focusing on work that we really should be doing.
I completely agree, because it's also when those messages come through, they're really disruptive too, because you
Yes.
could be doing something and then, oh, someone's messaged, I've got a message back
Yeah.
straight away. This idea
Yeah.
that you have to do things immediately. And then you add into that meetings. And
Yes.
some meetings are obviously very important and you have to have them. But then when you have your hours of your day filled with meetings and then you come back to your desk and there's that 100 emails and messages, then
Yeah.
yeah, and then you get to the end of the day, as you say, and it's, well, what have I actually achieved?
Yeah, and meetings are actually very challenging because particularly if you're in-house, you're not always, sometimes you can be in charge of your calendar, often you can't. And so you can end up with meetings all day where you might only have 30 minutes between a whole bunch of meetings. It's not really enough time to focus. And so they're the points where you have to try and work out, and we'll talk about that probably a bit later, how you can structure your day potentially. But it is quite difficult. And even as you mentioning, if anyone pings you for a message, as soon as you divert your brain away from something, it takes you quite a bit of time to get refocused. And so often you've lost the chance when you're doing some focused work. So all of that really does contribute to being busy, but maybe not productive.
Yeah, I think that gets on to my next question, where we're looking at how do we get into that sustainable pace and that focus? So what habits or structures can help in-house legal teams protect their highest value work?
Yeah, and I think, again, I like what Newport calls the slow productivity revolution, which is taken from the slow food and the slow cities movements, and really moving backwards and saying, okay, how can I take back what I need to do and look at making sure that I do the most important work first, and then still trying to keep everyone happy where you do need to, because stakeholders are very important, obviously, in private practice and in-house as well. One of the things with trying, which is difficult to do sometimes, but it is actually stepping back and trying to do fewer things. So looking at how can you reduce your obligations to the point that you can actually quite easily manage them and actually manage your work properly. Not always as easier said than done, but sometimes for legal teams, you can look at everyone's different levels, what is appropriate for the level you're at. Sometimes I think we find we end up doing work that maybe for the level we're at, what we're paid for and what the business expects for us, we're maybe not focusing on that. And I think that's a really important thing to think about first. What are the most, because sometimes it feels like you're fighting all these fires, but they might be for very low value work. And so I think the first thing is to really look at your work and think, okay, what are the few things that really need to be done? Limit the projects. Often in-house, you'll be asked to be on every meeting and which is great. Sometimes it's really important to do that. But then I think, again, you have to look, do you need to be in those meetings? Can you instead limit what you're doing and have a look every day and limit your goals that you want to achieve every day? You might have that longer list of what you need to achieve, but have a look in my day to day. What can I actually do that will be value add? Make sure you try and do that first. And I think some of it is also trying to work out, when do you work best? We all work best at different times of the day and different times of the week. We're all a little bit different. For example, I love coming into the office on a Monday to set myself up, and that's just something I like to do. I try to not have any meetings on Mondays, and then try and have that as my focus days, because the way we work, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays is just full of meetings. So I try and mix my day. Some people work really well in the mornings and love having meetings in the afternoons, and it's trying to, if you're able to block your calendar out so you can have focused periods where you have your meetings, maybe some periods that you need to leave open, but it's really trying every day to set a few things and also have them on a separate list. I think it's really important to show that if you only have 5 things you need to achieve in the day, you feel you've achieved them. You might have 20 things you need to achieve in the week, but if you keep seeing that longer list, I think it's a bit distracting and probably not as useful, and then you can focus on fewer things, and it really helps you to limit, to say, okay, well, I really need to focus on things. Try to put some time aside. I've been trying to do this a little bit better. Try to put some time aside for more of those autopilot tasks. You might have admin to do, you might need to do budgets, you might need to do billing, and maybe just try and block that at certain times in the week that you're able to do that rather than trying to spill that in the day. I also try and do those autopilot tasks on a day where I may unfortunately have meetings that I don't have a lot of time in between, so I don't feel like I can probably do anything really productive. I try and use those days to just knock off all the things that I need to do, but I maybe don't need to use my brain as much for those. You can create shared task lists with people, and that helps when people, particularly people outside of the legal team, if someone wants you to do something, you can direct them to a board or a schedule or a shared task, and they might get the answer from that. Often trying to have things like more frequently asked questions, more assistance for people in the business where they don't have to constantly come and speak to you and interact, but they get the answer they want. That's a longer term way to help with that. Probably also trying to set up a good intake procedure. So obviously many legal teams and legal operations really struggle when you have people coming to the legal team in very different ways. Someone might ring you, someone might come to your door, someone might send you an email. So we've set up, or we have Lawcadia as our matter management system. And I think it makes a really big difference. I know before the team had any system, it makes a really big difference to streamline so that everyone in the business knows where to come. It takes the noise out because it doesn't disturb the actual lawyers trying to do their work. It's all funneled properly. Then you have a system where you decide how to allocate and you do all of that. But that funneling just really takes a lot of the noise out. And it also makes sure that the people in the business have to produce a certain amount of information and documentation before they can. We have what we ask people to put into Lawcadia for us, for example. We want documents, we want a good description. We make people do quite a bit, and it really decreases that back and forth, which I think is a bit of, I won't say time wasting, but it's just not the best use of time because people haven't really thought through what they have. And we often will have people actually realizing that they don't need legal assistance, that it's actually just a business question that they can do themselves. So we found that that's a really great way to do it. Other things you can do is really just trying to work. This is very counterintuitive for people. We're always in a rush trying to get things done, but it's trying to work at that more natural pace, trying to make sure that, and I say this to a few people in my team quite often, almost doubling your timeframes for things. We might often think we can get a project done, but you have to think there'll be something else that comes in that's busy, something else that's more urgent. I think if you've got a longer term project, particularly to not burn yourself out trying to do it, try to do those at a good pace and give yourself that flexibility for things that come in. Try to simplify your day, as we mentioned before, and then you get the rewards of trying to slow your pace. You get things done, you get them done properly. That's really good. Things like every time you block out a meeting, some people will then block out the same amount of time to focus on that day. As I said, I try and do maybe Mondays and Fridays with fewer or no meetings if I can, because my day's a bit more condensed with meetings in between. But otherwise, if I have a lot of meetings, I will do that. I'll block a focus time towards the end of the day if I've got meetings in the morning, and that just gives me flexibility to do things as well. Try, as I mentioned, to have some days with no scheduled meetings if you can, and try and book in some time for yourself, whether it's for lunch, for rest, for exercise. I think it's really important. I've been encouraging, and I think if you're a leader, you have to really set the example and encourage your team to do that. I'm constantly at my team to try and get out, make sure everyone has taken a break where we're able to, or if I see people have been sitting too long, just to make sure that they've gone out to take a break or do something else, because you do a much better job with focus work if you have taken a break or gone and done some exercise, and I think you're just a little bit faster. And then obviously one of the things to look at is just making sure you look at quality over speed. And again, for leaders, it's really important to constantly tell your team there might be some times that you need to go for speed and you're at 80% of quality, and that's fine. But often you can take time on this task. And I think it takes a leader to say to the team, you can take time on this task. You don't have to give it to me straight away. Make sure it's good quality. That's what my preference is. So they're the things I think, might be a good way to start.
I think there's so many fantastic little nuggets of gold in what you've shared there, Caterina. I think the things that stand out for me is that quality over speed, and the recognizing and acknowledging that's sometimes what you really need to focus on, and also telling your team, giving them those, if there are certain types of work, then let's get it right rather than let's get it done quickly. And I think I know from experience, when you try and rush something, quite often that's when, mistakes might happen, and then it creates more work. It creates more work later because you haven't given that attention to detail.
And it actually does. If you look at that. I think it really does, whether it's for yourself or if you're a more junior lawyer and you give it to someone else, you've then created work for them because then they have to loop back to you. So I think slower, better quality work actually in the long run probably saves people time.
And now, in your article on slow productivity, one of the concepts you talked about was deep work. What does that mean and why is it important?
Yeah, again, this is another one of Cal Newport's ideas, which I really liked. And deep work is an approach that allows you, again, hard for lawyers, to turn off as much as you can from the outside world and really concentrate. It's trying to bring back that concentration to do really good work, because often if you're doing something that's strategic or you're doing something that's very challenging, you actually do need to do it distraction free. I think we're at a point where we try and think we can multitask, but it's not possible. And I think it's trying to build the space around yourself to do really good deep work. You might not always need it, whether you can focus maybe once or twice a week on some really important work and make sure you have no distractions. Whether if you have an EA, you're able to get them to juggle your calendar. If you're able to put in one of those focus periods in your calendar that actually rejects calendar invites, anything like that to really help you to try and really just focus. Try not to look at emails, try not to look at texts for a period of time, and just really focus on what's important. And I think, again, it's working towards telling people that it is that valuable, deep, good work rather than very fast churn work that we get done. Not always easy to do, but it also really helps you, because the more we do at the same time, and we're always trying to juggle everything, the less really you can do deep, proper work. You're trying to do 2 or 3 things, and I do this a lot myself. You're not going to be able to get the quality of thinking that you need and the space mentally to think, particularly if you're doing something strategic. It's very hard.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think one of the things that I do is blocking out an hour or an hour and a half in my calendar if there are actual projects or things that I really need to be spending my time on. And that sort of helps me carve out that time. But then having said that, I don't always, I'm also easily distracted sometimes too. So I don't always keep my own meetings. That's something I need to be more helpful at. And I think also we can't expect that we're going to be able to do that good deep work on a Friday afternoon when our brains are just fried.
No, and I think that's also trying to look at when do you work your best, because we all have periods of time where that, and that's when you think, maybe I might be better off having meetings when I'm a bit tired. Do I work better after lunch? Do I work better in the morning? And also, it also depends on your stakeholders as well. If you have stakeholders, if you're a global company, I have particular periods in the morning where I don't have as many stakeholders, and that's when I try and do things. So yeah, I think it's really just trying to juggle a bit and really recognizing for yourself when do you work the best as well.
Yeah, so it's also having that self-awareness and building that into how we're working. And I think that leads me on to my next question, which is about how do we lead by example and how do we model behavior that's going to encourage focus, balance, and long-term performance for our team?
And I think a lot of it, it is leading by behavior and making sure that you tell your team this. One of the biggest things I'm a big advocate for is recharging. And I don't always do the best, but I do tell my team to do it, but is recharging in nature. I think it's really important. I'm a big advocate for attention restoration theory, which is art, and that claims that spending time in nature helps your ability to concentrate. And so there have been studies that show that people have performed better in demanding mental tasks after going for a 30-minute walk in nature compared to people who've just walked in an urban environment. So if you're lucky enough to be near a park or be near some water, even if you can try to encourage people to take a break and actually saying to people, I'm going for a walk, I'm taking a break, I'm going for a walk, I'm going to the park for 20 minutes, having a break and then coming back and doing some work, I think that really helps. I think trying to find ways to slow down at the end of the day and unwind. I think a lot of us, particularly if we work in global companies, we always feel like we're on. And I think it's really important to restore your energy by trying to have a really strict shutdown ritual. Even if it's things like at the end of the day, I make sure I dump whatever time of day or evening that is for me finishing work, I make sure that I dump everything mentally onto a notepad that I need to do for tomorrow so that I've finished with that. And I try and, everyone is different. I myself try and block something between work and home to make it not feel like I'm constantly at home working. Even if I'm working from home, I will either at the end of every week, I do a yin yoga class. And for me, that there's signals to my brain now. I've only started doing that for about the last 2 months, and I found it's a really great way to signal. Weekend has started, and
Yeah,
I'm really
that's
strict.
Friday. So you do that Friday afternoon
I
at the
do
end
it
of the
Friday,
week.
yep, afternoon, and I'm very strict
What a
about
great
it. And I
idea.
do tell people about that. And I think, again, if you're a leader, it's great to tell your team to say, actually, I've got one or two not negotiables. I've got one particular Pilates class. I make sure I always get to that yoga class. And I think it's really important to have that, because then I feel a bit more rested. It's always then taking that break from focusing, trying to not always having that strict focus on screens and trying to break through for screen time. What I've also found is interesting is there's a lot of research to say trying to find a period where you're occupied physically but not mentally. So whether you're walking or jogging or driving or showering, you don't think about work in those periods. It's even because we're constantly thinking about work, whatever we're doing, even. And so it's trying to break through those periods, and you're physically actually doing something. And sometimes that you can have a breakthrough in those periods, but you're not meant to be thinking about anything. You can focus on particularly if you're doing something physically and you're doing something with your hands or your feet or something, but you're not mentally trying to think of anything. And there's a lot that helps with that. And trying to detox, I suppose, or some suggestions are trying to schedule. We all like to be distracted, trying to find, can you just decide for yourself, okay, I'm going to have 30 minutes a day where I can just go online, I'll go crazy. You choose the time of day that you do it, and that's your time. And so you know that you don't get distracted later in the day or keep checking your phone. And then the other one would be just, a lot of people do the digital detox, the 30-day detox from your phone, and then waiting in 30 days and bringing that back in to see how you can do that. Because I think it's recognizing that we live in an era where we will always be distracted. It's just trying to manage, how do we do that?
Yeah, I think some people probably start to have a panic attack when they think about 30 days without
Yes.
interacting with their phone. But I'm sure that I think it's really something worth researching,
Yeah.
because there might be some really good sort of tips and strategies in that. And then I'm guessing then the idea is that then you'll be more mindful when you come back.
Correct. And it doesn't have to be all of your things. It could be you just take off the 3 or 4 apps that you're constantly obsessed with. If you're always on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, you just take those off for 30 days. And then when you come back, you're meant to relook at the apps and then think to yourself, how did I go for 30 days? Do I really need this back? And often I think the suggestion is that you probably don't. And you probably realize you can do a really good job. I did a week of not looking at any social media, and I actually did feel better mentally. I didn't feel as stressed. First day, I think I was a bit stressed, but after that, I thought it was good. So even if you do a periodic detox, I think it's worth it. I think it helps you to reset.
I think that's a challenge that I'm going to have to take. Thank
Yeah.
you. That's with me. So let's see if there's some questions from the audience. How can junior lawyers or new team members be encouraged to adopt slow productivity without feeling penalised by not being fast enough?
Yeah, and I think I think a lot of that has to come from the leaders. I think a lot of that has to come from a culture in the team that hopefully can be built, where people recognize that good quality work. It's two things, I think. I think there's the recognition that you either have periods of really good quality work, or if you have to go fast, that you only do 70% of the quality, because sometimes you just have to go back. And I've said this to junior people in my team, if you go back fast, it doesn't have to be perfect. There's no point trying to sit there, make it perfect, but be fast. You can't always do that. I think it's conversations with your manager. If the person asking is a junior person, I think it's conversations with your manager to really talk through that. And I think a lot of leaders really recognize that now, and it resonates with them. So I'd hope that people would be open to that conversation. And if you're the leader of the team, then I think you've got to model it. You've got to show people that it's really important. You have to tell people. And I think it's also, you have to call people out when you feel they're working too long or maybe doing too many busy activities, and pull them back from those and saying, and if you're the more junior person, you can actually even bring a list. I go through the list with my team all the time to say, okay, that's not really important today, because sometimes people feel everything's important because the business has told them it is, and it's not. And I think you've just got to prioritize what's the more important work and what can just get done, or what maybe you push back on, which takes a bit of time.
Yes, it's really having those good conversations and that open sort of communication and discussing the priorities and
Yeah.
the different requirements of that particular tasks
Yeah.
and getting that clarity. So the last question I have is, what are your thoughts around this concept of slow productivity and how it influences creativity and problem solving?
Oh, I think it's really important. I think that I think we lack productivity when our minds are, and I'm talking for myself as well, when we're just in that busy mode of getting everything ticked off. You're so drained. We can't multitask. So we only have a finite amount of energy, and it goes to every time we switch and just try and tick the boxes. I don't think we can be productive. I think we have to try and find, and I myself am trying new things with trying, whether it's blocking out time, or for me, as I mentioned, my biggest thing is making sure I spend time in nature to try and restore. Last week I went to Fiji for a week. I did take work with me, but I'd spent a lot of time swimming and doing other things. And because I just don't think we can. I don't think we can. I think part of it is recognizing that when we're tired, we actually can't be creative. We can't do proper problem solving, and we're not going to be as useful for those really important tasks. So it's recognizing when we're tired, and I think also not trying to, on a day that is maybe not your best day or not your best time of day, not trying to schedule in those tasks, because you'll feel like you're hitting your head against the wall, I think, when you're not coming up with something, and then you'll just feel, oh, I haven't achieved anything. And that's, I think, counterproductive.
Yeah, I think it humanizes the idea of coming to work, and that you're bringing yourself and part of what it is to be human, which is we're not machines. And so you got to fill the cup. You can't work with a cup that's empty.
No.
So thank you so much, Caterina. That brings us to the end of our session. I just really want to thank you for sharing such valuable and practical insights on slow productivity. And thank you to everyone who's joined today for this discussion. I'm going to be sharing the recording and also some key takeaways shortly. But if you'd like to continue the conversation or learn more about Lawcadia, please reach out to me on LinkedIn, or you can explore more at lawcadia.com. And stay tuned. Our next episode is scheduled for Wednesday, the 24th of September with Joe Keane, where we're going to talk about building high-performing teams and leading the way to the Brisbane 2032 Olympic Games. So I'm looking forward to that conversation as well. Thank you so much again, Caterina. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks for the invite. I'm looking forward to the next one. I'll be online for that one. That sounds great.
Okay.